If you've ever been confused by the VA, especially with a VA decision letter, then you come to the right place. Welcome back. I'm Matt Webb. This is part 4 of our VA disability claim series, and I'm going to walk you through a sample letter that covers a lot of the elements that you can expect. Either you've already received this letter or you're awaiting this letter, and I hope this is helpful for you. So, it's common knowledge that most of us have the memory of a goldfish, myself included, and that just means that we're so bombarded with information that it's easy for our eyes to glaze over and for us to miss the important stuff. Well, don't worry, you came to the right place. You will understand the decision letter and all the important elements of it by the time we're done here. Let's get started. All right, on the screen you'll see a sample notification letter. That's the top sheet that will come with your decision letter packet. Important things to note are the date. So the date is very important because that gives us 1 year for all of our appeal options, and we'll talk about that later. Below that date, you want to scroll down to your benefit information, and these are actual decisions on the issues you claimed. Sometimes they'll regurgitate what you claimed in VA language and slightly alter what you were claiming. They'll tell you whether it was granted. In this case, PTSD was granted with a 50% evaluation for that issue. Another granted a service connection for tinnitus or tinnitus at 10%. The effective dates are on there, and that's important because the effective date is either when we did our intent to file or when we submitted our claim. Or if we got out within a year of service and put in our claim, it goes back to our very first day after we separated. So you want to check those effective dates. And on the bottom issue, the third issue, it says a denied service connection for degenerative disc disease of the lumbar spine. So that's important. You can have some things granted, some things denied, and some things deferred. And deferred just means that it took them too long to set up an appointment or it's too difficult to get an appointment in a reasonable amount of time. And typically the thing that they're missing is a C&P exam and they're awaiting that exam. So sometimes if they have the issues largely decided and there are one or two that need to wait, but it's going to be a long wait, they'll split the basket, so to speak, grant, deny some, and defer the other ones that they're still working on. Deferred is not necessarily a bad thing. Let's continue. So we know what the decision was. Below that, you have a monthly entitlement amount. The monthly entitlement amount is normally in a grid. In this example, I kind of simplified it a little bit, but that grid will have your monthly entitlement amount, the payment start date, and the reason. So in this case, the monthly entitlement amount is $1,663.02. Payment start date is June 1st, 2024. Payment start dates always start on the beginning of a month. So if you have an effective date, like above that, your issues were effective, let's see. Okay, in this sample letter, they're the same date. Oftentimes in the real world, you may have an effective date that's in the middle of a month. Well, you don't start to accrue that benefit to the following month. So let's say your effective date when you did the claim was April 24th. Your your payment start date would be May 1st. So that is important to know. So the VA only pays whole months. Below that grid, the first row of that grid will be any reason the pay is expected to change. For example, if you had a school-age child that was aging out, was turning 18 and wasn't in school, or a variety of reasons. Maybe there's a past history. This is a follow-on claim, and now you have an increase because of an increased rating. So all the reasons that payment would change will be in that notification letter in that table. Right below that, you see that the VA is paying this sample veteran as a veteran with 2 dependents, and that's important. You want to make sure that your dependency is correct. If you're a single veteran, fine. If you're married and you have children, dependent children, you want to double check that real quick. And the reason dependents will be paid, or you'll be paid because you have dependents, is if your overall VA rating is 30% or higher. If it's under 30%, they don't pay for dependents. Okay, here's a quick plug. They tell you have appeal options. You can, if you disagree with any part of the decision or the entire decision, you have 1 year to submit a supplemental claim, a high-level review, or an appeal to the Board of Veterans Appeals. And I'll cover that in a separate video in great detail for you. Now this is just a laundry list of additional benefits. This is essentially the same for every notification letter. Their mailing address. They've now reiterated for the second time what your appeal options are, and this is a little bit more detailed. Now you get to the part where you see this big seal, the VA seal. Department of Veterans Affairs, it'll have your name, which regional office decided your claim, and introduction. The introduction is important because it summarizes your service. Was it peacetime? Was it wartime? What were your service dates? You want to double check that. Below that is the decision, where they reiterate the issues that were granted or denied or deferred. Then below that, they get into the evidence list. You want to make sure you check your evidence against everything that you and your VSO submitted to the VA. Make sure nothing's listed. The meat of the letter is what's called the reasons for decision. Now here they break down each issue and they go into detail as to whether their service connection was determined by the VA. They'll give little references from the law about what that entails. The notes from your examiner, from your C&P examiner. And then there they are, in this case, this sample case, they're granting a 50% evaluation for this veteran's PTSD effective June 1st, 2024. And they're letting you know what a higher evaluation would require. They're saying they didn't go to 70% for the following reasons. That's something we want to go over. You want to go over in your life, and as a VSO, I want to review with my veteran. Now we're moving to the second issue. In this case, the sample veteran is service connected for tinnitus. And if you notice, he is granted 10%. Oh, by the way, 10% is the highest rating by law that you can get for tinnitus or tinnitus. You can get denied 0 or 10%. There's no avenue for an increase, no matter how crazy it makes you. Now this third example, the service connection for degenerative disc disease lumbar spine. They repeat what the requirements are for a service connection. And in this case, they're saying that although the veteran does have a chronic back condition, the VA examiner believes that the condition is less likely related to service and is more likely due to post-service occupational factors. Those discussions you're going to have with the C&P examiners like, well, Mr. Veteran, what did you do after you got out of service? Did you work in construction or any labor-intensive career field? And they're trying to weigh the environmentals post-service versus what happened in service. So that medical examiner offered a medical opinion, but that's not the decision, but the VA went ahead with the medical examiner. That's quite common. All right, let's take a pause here and discuss how the VA arrives at a combined evaluation. So a combined evaluation is the overall rating, the overall percentage that they award based on one or more individual ratings. So in this example, we saw PTSD rated at 50%, we saw a tinnitus rated at 10%, and then a denied issue, so a 5 and a 10. At the lower percentages like that, believe it or not, it will appear like they added 5 and 10, 50 and 10% together to get 60. In actuality, the VA math is different than the math that you and I grew up with. It's not simple addition. They use a diminishing return. So they first calculate the largest percentage, then the next percentage is the percentage of the remainder, and so on. So as you go up in ratings, when north of 50%, it becomes exponentially harder to reach that 100%. Some veterans are just focused on getting to 100%. That's not my focus. My focus is a fair rating, but they'll try any combination of increases and new issues and secondary issues, grasping at that 100%. So I want to show you how you can chair fly the formula, plug and play, look how different awarded percentages for individual issues will stack up and what it'll look like. So I'm going to bring you to the website, the va.gov website, and on va.gov, they have a disability ratings calculator. In our example here, we have 2 granted issues, individual ratings. The first one was PTSD, and the second one was tinnitus or tinnitus at 10%. This is what I want you to pay attention to. You can click calculate. It says 60, so you would think 50 plus 10 is 60. Well, in reality, if you look down here, the actual combined value of your disability rating is 55%. And at 55, or any number at a decade plus 5, they round up to the next higher 10. So 55 is 60, a 65 is 70, and so on. So you can see how these things start to separate from normal addition as we go further up. I'll give you another example here. Let's add a third rating. Let's put in, let's say, a 20%. Calculate. Now 50, 20, and 10 you would think would be 80%. Look at the difference already. The true calculation is 64%. Now we round down, because we're only at the 64%, down to 60. So I just wanted you guys to have an understanding of what VA math looks like. Everyone uses that phrase around my office about, well, it's VA math, it's not Sesame Street math, and this is how. You're dealing with a table versus actual addition. Hope that's a little bit clearer, and you can settle a bar bet with your friend if if they want to talk about how easy it is to get to 100%. Use this URL. Other private companies like Hill and Ponton, they have an excellent calculator. It goes into a little more detail. It has the pay scale with it, and it has some other factors that are a little bit in the weeds. But for your purposes, you now have the tools to understand how they arrive at the percentage that they did on the decision letter. Clear as mud? All right, and now for the third time in our reading of the notification and decision letter, they're reminding you of your appeal options. The reason they're doing this is that a large number of decisions are appealed. And under the doctrine of duty to assist the veteran, the VA is saying, here's how you appeal. So now they've told us a number of times how to do that. The most important thing that you need to know for this time is that you have a year to exercise all those options, to be aware of that year of that letter. Now we get to favorable findings. They go back and reiterate the conditions one more time. What are they not arguing? What do they concede? Will they concede service connection? They conceded this veteran has a diagnosis of PTSD and tinnitus. Okay. They also concede that this veteran was exposed to hazardous noise during military service. And in this sample, they don't go into too much else. In the real world, the favorable findings can be quite involved, and I recommend that you tick those off. Use a highlighter pen if you want. The favorable findings are things that you don't have to fight the VA anymore. So you want to, especially if you're going to appeal or you think you were underrated, you want to zero in on the things that they did not find that were not under the favorable findings, and that's where you want to put your efforts into, your research, your gathering of additional evidence. So again, this is something recent. The VA didn't do this years ago, didn't offer favorable findings. They didn't describe what it took to get to the higher level. So there's a lot in this letter that's to your benefit to read. Okay, I hope that walkthrough and summary was helpful. Remember, I always tell my clients to grab a highlighter pen or a pencil, and if you have any questions, write in the margins. It's your product. You could share that notification letter with your doctor when they talk about the rationale for their decision. That's always a good thing to have on you. Let your VSO assist you if you have questions too. Walk through it. Remember, your VSO wouldn't have gotten a copy of this letter. I don't get copies. My clients get their copy, and then they typically call me and say, hey, Matt, I got my decision. I want to walk through it with you and see what my options are. Should I appeal? Should I appeal for an increase? Things like that. So we can help you with the rest of the story, the other evidence that was referenced in that decision letter. In a future video, we're going to go deep on what appeal options are open to you, how to prepare for an appeal. If you were granted a decision you thought that you were, in which you thought you were underrated, the percentage came in lower than what you were expecting, what strategy you should use when going back to the VA for an increase. I'll even talk about poking the bear, which is kind of a euphemism for maybe pushing a little hard, maybe risking things that you've already been evaluated for, because they get reevaluated when you go back to the VA. So a lot more meat on the bone, but I just wanted you to be a little more familiar with the letter. I hope I answered some of your questions. Please feel free to use the comments below if you have any other questions, and that'll generate video content that maybe you'd like. Till then, thanks for tuning in. We'll talk soon. Bye-bye.